your right main is now missing from the airplane. It's fallen off the airplane. Say your intentions.
The video is really interesting because it shows a new pilot. This 17-year-old girl probably has only about 25 to 30 hours of flying experience. Her name is Maggie Taraska. She's working on getting her first license, and from what we see in the video, she's only flown the plane by herself maybe 2 or 3 times before. In those situations, it's easy to imagine how uncomfortable you'd be if something went really wrong.
Warrior 24906 X-ray, runway 9, full length, cleared for takeoff.
Cleared to takeoff, 96 X-ray.
Tower, that Warrior just departed. The right main gear strut and wheel just fell off the airplane.
Roger. Warrior 24906 X-ray, Tower.
Yeah.
Okay, Warrior 24906 X-ray, the WACO just said that your right main is now missing from the airplane. It's fallen off the airplane. Say your intentions.
Can I circle back to land?
Warrior 906 X-ray, affirmative. Are you a solo, ma'am?
I'm a student pilot solo, yeah.
Okay, it'll be okay. Just go ahead and circle the airport for now. Make a right turn to circle. We're going to get some people out to help you, okay?
Okay.
Pattern altitude 1,100, and you can make a right turn out, okay?
Okay.
Obviously, this girl is really shaken. In flight school, they say we have 2 bags, one full of luck and one empty for experience. As we go through training, we make mistakes, taking from our luck bag and adding to our experience bag. Over time, we rely less on luck because, well, eventually, luck runs out, and we need our experience to get through. This girl only has around 20 to 30 hours of experience, and she's already used up her luck chips. But what the controller did was really commendable.
Pattern altitude 1,100, and you can make a right turn out, okay?
Now, the controller realizes that this girl is a student pilot and understands just how overwhelmed she must be feeling. Instead of instructing her to turn to the southbound pattern altitude, which she technically could have done, the controller says, make a right-hand turn out and fly at 1,100 feet, which is the pattern altitude. Pattern altitude, in simple terms, refers to the altitude maintained when practicing takeoffs and landings in a racetrack pattern around the airport. By providing a specific altitude, it reduces the cognitive load for the pilot, making the instructions easier to follow. This alleviates potential confusion and helps prevent tunnel vision, which can occur when things become too complicated. The controller's actions demonstrate their greater experience and understanding of the situation compared to the new pilot, who may only have around 20 or 30 hours of flight time. Now, pay attention to the switch in the controller's tone, shifting from controller mode to a nurturing one.
Warrior 906 X-ray, affirmative. Are you a solo, ma'am?
I'm a student pilot solo, yeah.
Okay, it'll be okay. Go ahead and circle the airport for now. Make a right turn to circle. We're going to get some people out to help you, okay?
We're not sure if the controller is a mom, but the way she cared for this 17-year-old pilot was just like a mom comforting her daughter. Instead of being all serious, she balanced giving instructions with comforting the pilot. You could hear her tone change, reassuringly saying, "Everything's going to be okay." Even though calming pilots down is not her main job, she did it naturally. With the wheel problem, it's normal for the pilot to feel scared, so the controller's calmness really helped. This shows how controllers support pilots. And in this case, what the pilot needed most was to feel confident again. It's a perfect example of the controller's experience and professionalism. So, hats off to the controller for handling the situation so well. Let's see what happens next.
Hey, this is John. How you doing?
I'm okay.
Okay, you're doing a great job flying the airplane. Keep doing what you're doing. They're going to stage the equipment just in case anything's needed there, but we're just going to wait. We're going to take our time here. We got plenty of time. You got plenty of fuel. We got plenty of daylight. So just try to relax. And you always heard me say go back to basics. So we're going to work the basics here as much as possible, okay?
All right.
We're going to do this just like we did. I know it's hard to say this, but treat it like much as like a normal landing as you can. So the power settings we've always done, the pitch for the airspeed, keep everything as normal as you can.
All right.
So the person speaking on the radio now is actually her flight instructor, which is the best scenario in an in-flight emergency. Having someone you're comfortable with and who has been teaching you is crucial. You want that familiar voice to guide you. So, it worked out great that he was nearby and able to get to the control tower. He mentioned staging the equipment, which you may not be familiar with. Listen closely here.
They're going to stage the equipment.
Whenever a pilot declares an emergency, even if she didn't, but they did it for her because they realized the situation, the fire trucks are dispatched as a precautionary measure. He used the term equipment instead of fire trucks to avoid causing panic, especially because she is young and has very little experience. He mentioned they'll be getting ready and staging just in case they're needed. It's a subtle way of saying they'll have everything ready in case there's a serious problem, whether it's extinguishing a fire, assisting with evacuation, or any other necessary action. It's a considerate approach to handling the situation. Listen to what the instructor says right here.
You always heard me say go back to basics, so we're going to work the basics here as much as possible, okay?
What the instructor is telling her is to go back to basics, focusing on all the usual procedures and actions. Despite the unusual situation with one landing gear missing, the plane is still functioning based on the same principles. So, instead of getting overwhelmed by the circumstances, she should stick to the fundamentals and keep the plane flying. Listen how she calms down from here.
All right. I'm a student pilot solo, yeah.
She's becoming more comfortable, which is crucial. There's an old saying in aviation, if you have an emergency, wind your watch. This means don't make hasty, abrupt reactions, especially in her situation where the airplane is flying fine despite the missing landing gear. In emergencies, it's important to take a moment to assess the situation calmly. This is one of the advantages of flying a fixed-wing aircraft. You usually have time to think things through. Reacting too quickly can sometimes worsen the situation. So, she's doing the right thing by staying composed and processing everything. She's starting to realize that the plane is still functioning properly. With a familiar voice guiding her, she's handling the situation admirably.
Greg and I have looked at the airplane through binoculars, so it's your right wheel that's missing. So and the plus side here is you got a little bit of a left crosswind. So if you use your normal left wing crosswind correction, that means the left side will touch down first, and you're just going to ease the right side down. It's going to try to pull to the right, so be prepared to use as much left rudder and left brake as you have to try to keep it on the center line.
All right.
This is probably the most flight instructor-like statement ever.
So be prepared to use as much left rudder and left brake as you have to try to keep it on the center line.
When pilots are starting out, one of the common things instructors stress is keeping the plane's wheels aligned with the center line of the runway during landings. It's a fundamental skill taught in flight school because it helps ensure a smooth and safe touchdown. Instructors often repeat the phrase center line, center line, center line to emphasize the importance of maintaining alignment. Mastering this skill early on is crucial, as it becomes even more essential when flying larger aircraft or landing on narrower runways. This picture shows what the instructors see when they're observing Maggie's plane. You can see here that a tire is missing from the main landing gear. An additional piece of advice the instructor could have given Maggie would be to aim for landing on the left side of the runway. Knowing that the plane tends to pull to the right, instructing her to land on the left side would have improved her chances of staying on the runway throughout the landing. However, with smaller planes like this one, veering off the runway isn't usually a major concern. While it may result in some damage to the plane, it's generally manageable, and occupants are typically unharmed. At Maggie's level of experience, even if she had landed with the tire missing on the left side of the runway, it wouldn't have been a significant issue. You might have seen instances where planes land completely off the runway and still manage to come out unscathed. However, this isn't the case with larger aircraft like a 747, where landing significantly off course would pose much greater risks. Let's see what Maggie does next.
What's real good, Maggie? You get enough spacing out there?
I think so, yeah.
We're not going to rush everything. This is going to be perfectly normal. If something looks wrong, I'll tell you to do a go-around, but we're going to do a perfectly normal landing here.
All right. Should I drop the flaps now?
So, Maggie, when you're comfortable, go to full flaps.
All right. I'm there now. Sorry.
That's okay. You're doing a great job. Just remember that 09's your aiming point. Very light winds, Maggie. Very light left crosswind. So that's all to your advantage. You're doing great. Keep doing what you're doing.
I'm going to go back all the way down to power.
You're doing a perfect job, Maggie. Just treat it like a normal landing. It's going to try to pull to the right. So when that left main touches down, right main touches down.
You may have noticed that he said 09 is your aiming point. Listen here.
Just remember that 09's your aiming point.
What he's talking about are the numbers located at the beginning of the runway. Essentially, those numbers serve as your aiming point. It's important to clarify that the aiming point isn't necessarily where you'll touch down, but it's what you should aim for during your approach. This is a key concept emphasized in flight school. The instructor is advising her to aim for the very start of the runway, which is crucial for a successful landing. However, it's essential to understand that you don't want to actually land on those numbers at the very start of the runway. If you come in too short or experience a loss of power, you could end up landing short of the runway, which could exacerbate an already challenging situation. So it's important to distinguish between the aiming point and the landing point. Despite this, the instructor's guidance here is valuable.
It's going to try to pull to the right. So when that left main touches down, right main touches down.
It's just a gentle reminder. While Maggie is aware that her wheel is missing as she prepares to land, the instructor is reminding her about the tendency for the plane to pull to the right. It's a way of ensuring she keeps this important detail at the forefront of her mind, especially considering the various factors she's managing at that moment. It was a wise move on his part to do so. Now, let's listen to what Maggie says next about the power.
I'm going to go back all the way down to power.
She's speaking to herself and her instructor, voicing her uncertainties aloud. It's evident that she's unsure, which is natural given the circumstances. By verbalizing her thoughts, she's likely seeking reassurance and confirming that she's making the correct decisions. So one thing she's doing is talking to herself. She's feeling a bit unsure. It's notable that she extended her flaps all the way early, which is perfectly fine. She's discussing pulling back on the power, but in reality, she's handling the situation quite well. She's making the necessary adjustments to safely bring the plane onto the runway. There's no issue with deploying the flaps early. It just means she'll need to use more power to reach the runway, which is acceptable, especially in this circumstance. It's better to be fully configured and prepared rather than scrambling to make adjustments at the last minute. It's understandable that she's nervous and uncertain about her actions, considering her current level of flight experience.
I'm a student pilot solo, yeah.
New pilots transitioning from a small propeller plane to their first jet often experience uncertainty. They're unsure about when to deploy the flaps or adjust the power, so they rely on guidance from the captain or check airmen they're flying with. These experienced pilots walk them through the process, advising them on what actions to take at each stage. However, Maggie doesn't have the luxury of having someone there with her to provide that guidance. This adds to the complexity of the situation she's facing. Even experienced airline pilots go through a similar learning process as they advance in their careers. Initially, they may ask questions and seek guidance, but over time, and with more experience, they become more confident in making decisions independently. So it's not just the fact that Maggie has around 30 hours of flying experience, it's also that she's feeling uncomfortable and uncertain about the plane, which is a common reaction in such circumstances. And finally, Maggie did it. She executed a safe landing, emerging without any injuries.
Yeah, beautiful job, Maggie. You got a whole bunch of people clapping for you up here.
She obviously gets the plane on the ground okay, and was willing to sit in there and reply to her instructor that she was happy if everything went well. This is what the plane looked like after she landed. Obviously, it's a little banged up, but that is not important at all. What's most important is that she's okay. This is a great example of using all available resources. So, you have the pilot using air traffic control, the controller helping them out, the instructor assisting, and she's utilizing all available resources. Now, it's mostly them giving them to her and not her asking for them, but it doesn't really matter. This is a great example of aviation teamwork. In an emergency, you have so many people that are there, willing to do anything they can to help you. I read online that the instructor heard that there was a problem, was in this plane with another person, ran back, took the plane back, parked, got out, got something to get over to the control tower, and got in the control tower to help Maggie out. This illustrates in aviation just how much of a family it is. Even though sometimes you'll hear pilots bickering with controllers and stuff like that on these air traffic control versus pilots, you'll know that at the end of the day, if you're in a jam, nobody's going to do more to help you out than that controller.